So we got a host of random topics today to talk about. We just, instead of doing hot takes, we're doing random takes and seeing what both of our opinions are on them. So our first subject to lead off today is number one. Who do you want to take the last shot in an NBA game? Is it Paul Pierce or Carmelo Anthony? What you say?
So for me, the last shot in the game might seem like an unpopular pick, but I would probably go with Paul Pierce, actually. And I'm.
How would that be popular?
I mean, I feel like Paul Pierce. He's at a point where like everyone just gives him slack, mainly because recently when he was on ESPN and stuff, like he would say crazy stuff, but people forget Paul Pierce was like that. In fact, like I think he has 12 total career game winners plus assisted game winners in history, which is the most ever. So based on that alone, like that tells me that dude is clutch. And it's not that Carmelo Anthony is not, but I've also seen Paul Pierce have those clutch moments in the playoffs, right? Like when he came back, like I know he went to the locker room, but he came back against the Lakers in that finals game and he just went on a run. Or that big shot he hit on the Big Three Heat in like 2012, or like he had a game winner too against the Heat with D Wade like the year before the Big Three formed. Like he had all these moments. He led, I think, the biggest comeback in playoff history at that point in like 2002. Like that dude gets it done, and so because of that, I'm gonna go with Paul Pierce.
I 100% am on board. Like you said, a lot of these kids don't know or whatever. A lot of people just see all the goofy stuff Paul Pierce has been doing in recent times. But Paul Pierce is that guy. Like, there's a diamond in all this crazy, ridiculous stuff he says, but he's got so many classic quotes like did you call glass? He's like, I call game. When he hit that buzzer, one of those buzzer beaten bank shots, or I think it's like this, that KG was telling that story recently where he was like talking trash. Him and Kobe were talking trash, and KG was just talking to Kobe, and then Paul Pierce was like, yeah, what he said. So P squared, they call him the truth for a reason. I actually have a Paul Pierce jersey in my closet. It's technically my sister's, but she never wore it.
I also have a Paul Pierce jersey. I don't know if it's in my closet right here, but
he's the truth man, and people kind of need to put more respect on his name. He's done plenty to throw a little bit of shade on it, but he needs to get his name respected. He's one of those guys, even though he only got the one chip, and I know people make fun of how he thinks he had a better career than D Wade, but in a way, even though he's kind of incorrect, I don't blame him for feeling that way, because he hit so many big shots. People can't really appreciate how great of a player he still was in that later part of his career and during that Big Three run when he didn't take a back seat, but he stepped aside for the other guys to come in. And I don't know what the stats are, but similar to how I'm pretty sure LeBron's clutch stats are far better than Kobe's, I'm still picking Kobe. So like no matter what the stats would tell me about Carmelo in the last shot, I'm picking the truth every time, hands down.
Yeah, I think even in this case, the stats do favor Paul Pierce. But yeah, even if they didn't, like, I'm kind of right there with you, because like I didn't even say when I was rattling him off, like that shot with the Wizards, like where he's like, did you call bank? I called game. Like that's just the fact that he was doing it from that long. That's like over a decade's worth of time. And Melo had a long stretch of clutch moments too, but it just you didn't feel it enough like in the playoff setting,
Yeah. And Paul, you know what? Paul Pierce is amazing at making these extremely unathletic, amazingly big plays. Back in 2014, I think he blocked Kyle Lowry's shot to send the Raptors home in the playoffs, and I think he jumped about 6 inches off the floor. And same when sometimes when he hits those big shots, he just jumps about an inch off the floor, and you know what? Goes in. So, all right. Great way to start us off there. And number two, this is a topic that is really cool and near and dear to my heart. One-on-one, who you picking to win, Grant Hill or LeBron James?
You know what? I'm gonna throw this back to you. I want to hear what you have to say first, and then I'll go.
I'm going 100% going Grant Hill, because he was kind of like LeBron before LeBron. I think if we're talking one-on-one, I think Grant Hill is actually we're talking about primes, and people sleep on the fact that prime Grant Hill, they were great numbers, but they were pedestrianly great, like 20-point type numbers, like he was more about the triple-double kind of stuff. But that guy's scoring ability, one-on-one, to penetrate a defense and just break down a guy, spin off of him, get to the rack. If we're talking one-on-one and it's one-on-one and 3-point and in, I think Grant Hill dominates that game. I think he dominates that style of basketball.
Yeah,
Grant Hill, so I think it's not like he's going to kill LeBron, but I put my money on Grant Hill all day.
Yeah, and I wanted to hear what you had to say because, I'm right there with you, actually. I agree.
No.
But I didn't want to steal the thunder because I know, before we recorded, we kind of talked a little bit about this one. I didn't want to steal the thunder. But, I agree with you. And also it's LeBron excels a lot with one of his, as maybe a lot of LeBron fans will say, his biggest skill is passing. And while Grant Hill as well was actually a really good passer for even his position, I think that LeBron and that edge, he would have that edge for sure. But, defensively, I think Grant Hill's maybe a little bit more active. LeBron, more so with his size and stuff like that. But in terms of maybe quickness, I think Grant Hill's right there with him. I think maybe agility, you could argue he's right there with him or even higher. Ball handling, I think Grant Hill's at his best. I think Grant Hill's a better ball handler than LeBron. So all those things considered, it's he can get downhill just as good as LeBron can, but also there wouldn't be many threes probably taken, but I just feel like Grant Hill has maybe a cleaner approach with, whether it's getting to the basket or getting to his spots or making his moves than maybe LeBron does at points. If that makes sense.
Yeah. But I just want to say, you mentioned that. That was one of the reasons too. I just think Grant Hill was a better ball handler, especially when it came to just being 3-point line and in. And LeBron, better shooter probably because, Grant Hill wasn't as much of a shooter back then because the game was different. But I think so. We do agree. Grant Hill would win that matchup, hands down. I'm saying, and I think you're agreeing.
Yeah, in a 5-on-5, if they were matched up, maybe LeBron would have the better numbers. Maybe they would win because he would have maybe more control. I feel like that's his biggest thing. But I think Grant Hill in a 1-on-1, it takes away a lot of LeBron's strengths.
Exactly. That's what I was like. Who loses more out of that matchup? And I was like, LeBron loses so much more every time.
I mean, LeBron, I guess, allegedly lost 1-on-1s to Michael Beasley when they were both on the Heat, and and that was near the end of Michael Beasley. So, I mean, come on.
The air conditioning must have been off. I'm sure he just had some cramps. Oh no, I'm sure it was just cramps. I'm sure. All right, topic number 3. We've got AI versus Steph. Allen Iverson versus Stephen Curry. Who was more influential to the game?
Dude, this is a hard one to answer because I feel like they're so influential in so different ways. With Allen Iverson, I think while they both were influential, from a cultural standpoint, I think maybe Allen Iverson was a little bit more. You had people doing the cornrows and the headbands and stuff like that. Basically, they wanted to match Allen Iverson's swagger, both on and off the court. You had people even that didn't even care, didn't touch a basketball maybe in their life. They were I want to, be like Allen Iverson or something like that. And I think his impact stretches across the world. In the same breath, that's also true for Steph Curry because his is more so between the lines where it's he's kind of changing the way, people play. And granted, I think maybe he gets too much credit for that because the Rockets, just like the Warriors, were also developing the 3-point shot, and you got other guys like Dame and Buddy Hield that at the same time were also shooting more threes as Curry. It's just that he's the best player to come out of that bunch. But I would say if I had to pick one, you're really putting me on the spot with having to pick one. I'm gonna just say, if we're talking about playing the game of basketball, Steph probably had more influence still. If I'm maybe who would influence me more as a person or something like that, and especially not even just the way I dress or the stuff like that, but just maybe from life experiences or something like that, and like what you can learn from somebody just from hearing them speak and like moving forward. Like I feel like Allen Iverson is way more equipped in that department than Steph Curry.
Yeah, like, and you know, it is tough. It's, you know, and obviously the bias is apparent, but it is, you know, when you bring up a name like Steph Curry, and I think it's interesting because they've impacted the game obviously in their own ways. And the way I look at it is, because Steph Curry's still playing, it's kind of hard to measure it, but it's like people have been trying to replicate what Steph Curry's been doing from the beginning, like not from his first year, but as soon as Steph Curry started really becoming Steph Curry and the Warriors started succeeding with it, you see other teams go in that direction. But that was also kind of influenced by, say, like Phoenix Suns basketball in the mid-2000s and stuff like that, the fast-paced offense, the lots of three-point shooting. Steph Curry just started shooting from even further out. I would say maybe I give the edge to Iverson in one regard, is that he's left the game and we see so much of the way he impacted the game today. And people don't even realize that it's his impact on the game today. And we're talking about everything from arm sleeves, you know, to even just the way I would say the level of offensive freedom players have with the ball. Like, it's funny how AI got accused of carrying the ball back in the 90s. And of course,
Yep.
the rules are back then, but you're like, if you go by today's rule, he never carried the ball in his life. You know what I mean? So it's so hard to measure. And I would say it's almost like the only reason I'm giving the edge to AI is because of that lasting impact and how much I see people not even really knowing that it's him, which almost seems like a knock against him for the influence. But you know what I mean? Because his part in the story of basketball has worked in so seamlessly. You know what I mean? Whereas I think Curry, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I'm saying in terms of what he did, he was such an interrupter, which AI was at the time. But now it's just kind of part of, like, the tattoos, the core, like the image of the average NBA player looks a lot more like Allen Iverson, but you don't look at NBA players right now and associate them all with Allen Iverson. They're just NBA players, you know? And the obvious point you made about the off the court, you know, the cultural impact, let's say that, right? I think Steph Curry's impact is so purely within the lines, you know what I mean? They many similarities in inspiring those littler guys, inspiring the smaller guards, making them believe they can really not only be the greatest players in the game, but the best leaders in the game, stuff like that. So it's so close. It's so close. Really could make the argument for either side, but I'm edging towards AI, and not just because I'm a fanboy.
I think the best way to put it, you know, even like not even, I guess, talking about like the outside the lines thing, but like, you know, Steph Curry, he changed the game, but Allen Iverson, the game changed because of him. You know, because like, if you think about it, like, because that was the next thing I was gonna say. Like, when you're talking about like the dribbling and like stuff like that, and like how often he would call for like a carry and stuff like that, like the game completely adjusted at that point because of him. Like, if you go back, like literally, because I've been, you know, I watch a lot of old games every now and then, and I'll watch like old games from like 2001, 2002, and like you'll hear the commentators say, you know, like, oh, that's a carry, but it's like, if that's a carry, you should see what Jordan Poole's been doing lately. every time he touches the ball, that's a carry, that's a travel, or James Harden or Luka. Like, everyone does that now. Like, can you imagine if like someone like Allen Iverson had the freedom to do that like today, or like with the refs, the way calling it the way they do today? Like, things would be different.
Yeah. No, it's you know what, that is such a tough topic to really, because there's so much love for both players, and they both, it's like, because it's not just something identical where you can just pick who won. It's like they did many things that were different and more. But yeah, I give the edge to AI. Sounds like you're giving the edge to AI too.
I would.
Or no, you said.
I think Curry has had more imprint, like, between the lines. I feel like, at least if I'm talking like personally, probably I would say like Allen Iverson had a bigger influence on me than Steph Curry, but it's close.
Yeah. Okay. Number 4. in NBA game setting, so regular NBA game, in their primes, they went up against each other. Who would have the best dunk in that game? Ja Morant or Vince Carter?
I feel like this is the easiest one, personally, of all these topics, and I'm going with your guy, Vince Carter. See, the thing is, like, with Ja, is that Ja might dunk, he might try to dunk more than Vince, but, you know, if the objective is to, you know, get a highlight dunk, like, you can memorize, like, the crazy thing is Vince Carter, yeah, he played a couple years ago, but, like, he hasn't been, like, prime Vince Carter in at least a decade, probably, right?
Yeah.
And so, but you probably remember more Vince Carter highlights from the Olympics to dunking on Alonzo Mourning, you know, like the dunk contest. Like, you can remember more highlight dunks of Vince than Ja Morant. And Ja Morant's doing it, like, every day, like, that we're seeing, you know, like, when he's, you know, on the court and not suspended. But, like, it's crazy to me, especially in, like, the social media age. I think Ja also is kind of the, like, I would say, like, the king of missed dunks, because he has so many, like, what if highlights, like when he almost dunked on Kevin Love, and then I think there was, like, another one against, like, the Suns or something like that, like, he almost had, like, he has so many, like, oh man, if he would have dunked that, but, like, he didn't, you know. So he might try to dunk more. Like, some of them might be basic, some of them he might miss, but I think Vince Carter is going to get the one that, like, really pops out the most. So I'm gonna take Vince Carter.
Yeah, I think this is actually an interesting topic, because both these guys, you know, they got one thing on their mind when they look at the rim, is attack. They both have attack mode. So to me, what it actually comes down to is who's going to be able to have the most demoralizing dunk, demoralizing for the other team, and that's why I'm going with Vince. You said it's obvious. You know, in some ways maybe it is. I thought it was a bit closer, because I thought about all these things that they sort of share in common. I would say Ja actually flies a little higher. You know what I mean? Maybe has a little more hang time as well. But Vince Carter has some of the most demoralizing dunks you will ever see on a team. You know, you think it's demoralizing when Ja, you know, jumps over a guy and puts his hips in his face, stuff like that, and the crowd's going wild. Well, you got to see what it looks like when Vince Carter used to just suck the air out of a gym and had the fans of the other team, because they're in the visiting team's arena, had the other teams laughing and cheering. You know what I mean? And I still always go back to the bad alley-oop. If you know anything about Vince Carter, it's either the jumping over the Frenchman, the dunk contest, maybe the Alonzo Mourning dunk, or the bad alley-oop from half court. And the thing is, I'll always remember they were trailing. It was like the last few minutes of the game. The announcers thought the Clippers were going to win. And after he hit that dunk and demoralized the crap out of that team, they came back, and then he hit the game winner in overtime. So I'm giving Carter the edge, just because I think Carter had that ability to just completely, and as a Raptors fan, after he left us, he just abused us. Just abused. People talk about LeBronto. Well, guess what? Before there was LeBronto, Vince Carter still owned us after he had left, and would demoralize us with dunks at the end of games and stuff. So the demoralization factor, I'm giving Carter the edge, even though I think Ja, all things considered, might actually be maybe a better dunker than Vince. I'm saying maybe on that. Obviously not a greater dunker.
I disagree. I think Vince is the greatest dunker ever. Like, Ja is probably. It's funny because I did a dunk list, like the top 25 dunkers, like, a while back, and I had Vince number 1. I think I had Ja somewhere in, like, the top 25, but it was, like, near the back end. There's just a lot of great dunkers.
He's still working his way. You know, he's still working his way. He's nowhere near one of the great dunkers of all time, but in terms of an impact dunker like Vince was, Ja's already an impact dunker for sure. Okay, our fifth and final topic: Kyrie versus Penny Hardaway. Which of those two players would you rather have on your team in their prime? So obviously Penny had a short prime, but it was very prime. Kyrie has had an interesting but longer prime.
Yeah, I feel like this is an interesting one, like you said, because I feel like the best version of Kyrie is what we've seen, like, in the years since the championship. You know what I mean? Like, I would argue, like, maybe that season with the Nets when he was 50, 40, 90, 27 points a game, like, that was probably his best season. And, like, honestly, like, one of the seasons he had with Boston, like, the playoffs were ugly, but the regular season, I think it was the year before actually, like that was one of his better years too, and he was like the main option. So like you could argue like those seasons were better for Kyrie and more so his prime. But what comes with that too is that like the baggage off the court, saying like, oh, all this stuff about like crazy conspiracy theories to just basically like we don't need a coach, and then it's like it just like looks bad on everything. So who I would rather have on my team, Penny Hardaway was like top 3 in MVP voting in his prime. Like people forget, like in '96, Shaq missed a decent amount of games, and Penny Hardaway was the best player on the team that season. Like even though like Shaq still played like 60 or so games, like for that regular season, Penny was better, and they won 60 games. It's just the Bulls won 72, and they were just a better team that year. But I think Penny at his best, like prime for prime, I think he could do more things than Kyrie. I think he's a safer pick as well, like, in the locker room and stuff like that, and just in terms of like team chemistry as a whole. But I think maybe if we're talking about like heating up and stuff like that, and like maybe, ego or like, that stuff aside, like then I could definitely see like people saying Kyrie is the choice, because Kyrie, like when he's on a heater, like might be one of the scariest players to guard. Like he's probably one of the last players a lot of point guards ever want to guard,
Yeah. I don't know if this answer is going to be surprising to you, because basically I want to say Penny, but the caveat that I've used with a lot of Kyrie conversations I've had is if I have LeBron James on my team, then I'll pick Kyrie over Penny, because I think under any other circumstance it's a no-brainer for me. Penny's going to make any team I'm on better. It's not that Kyrie can't be a great player and do great production and be an efficient player. Just chemistry-wise, fit-wise, you know what? I'm going to optimize the situation, not even get into the drama. We all know if we include the drama, honestly, is Kyrie even worth it? Who knows? But if I have LeBron James, which I will just for the sake of this scenario and being able to pick Kyrie, I'll say if I have LeBron James on my team, I'm picking Kyrie, because Kyrie, for his million different flaws, he wants those big shots, and he can. Not only has he proven it, but like he just has the mentality. He's probably one of the best sort of big shot makers of all time that I also just like despise. Like I don't mean despise. I mean despise in terms of having on my team. You know what I mean? Like I really don't want that guy. I think he's a poison. I don't want him anywhere near my team. But if I can sign him for like the last minute of every close game, hands down, I want him. So in that essence, when he's on a team with a guy like LeBron, I think we get the best version of Kyrie. Maybe not the best individual player, because you're right. His best years, his true prime years came past Cleveland. But when you're playing with a guy like LeBron, you're going to lose a few shots and stuff like that. I put his real prime being that championship year in Cleveland, and that's the player I'll take on my team. So if I get to include the caveat of having LeBron James on my team, I'm picking Kyrie Irving. Any other situation, 100% Penny Hardaway, no question.
I think that makes me rise a question that I'm curious what you have to say. So, like I said, I feel like the prime of Kyrie as a player came after leaving, even though like the off-court drama and stuff like that. But like 2016 Kyrie, like he was still pretty young. Like he was only like 24 or 25. So like still not really like a kid, but like basically like the feel of like a kid, you know what I mean? Yeah. And obviously that next year, that's when he requested a trade and he wanted out, maybe because he was starting to feel like I want my own thing, like I feel like grown enough that I should be the man, So do you think maybe for that to be the case, like it should be having to take like 2016 or so Kyrie, because that was probably like the last version we saw of him at a high level, that like maybe he could accept being like a number 2, and he could accept like kind of being like someone else is going to play like as the main leader of the team. He's going to say like what goes on if we're going to win, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like this. I guess this is what it boils down to. Even though, because what you're saying about what you're talking about is prime being in that 50, 40, 90 year, 27 points with Brooklyn, and even though easy to be like he was, the second op, you could say he was. That was really a team where it's like, well, any given night, somebody could be option number one. I think Kyrie is best. We're getting into a lot of caveats here with this one, but I think Kyrie is best when not only is he number two, but he's a hungry number two. That guy who's hungry for that number one spot, but is still disciplined enough to be number two. And like I said, number two to a guy like LeBron, who for whatever reason you want to give, some will say it's because he's scared of the big shot, or some will say because his fans will say because he shares the ball. Bottom line is, when he's the number two guy who's got number one status in that last minute, I think that's when he thrives. Now, granted, he pretty much has number one status even on those great teams with Durant and Luka. Briefly. Well, I mean, they only played a few games together, but yeah, anyone would gladly give Kyrie the ball for that last shot. But I just think like he needs that guy who, I mean, I don't know if I don't think he exactly saw LeBron as. Who knows what Kyrie sees people that he looks up to as? We usually use the term men. I don't know what he saw LeBron as, but seeing LeBron as the obvious bus driver, we'll use that term because that's the popular basketball term. The obvious bus driver, but wanting to drive the bus. You know what I mean? I think that's when you get the best out of Kyrie. When he's hungry, but he knows he's number two and he's trying to become number one, but he's not established number one. That's a lot of specifics, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I think, I feel like it is part of it where it's like when Kyrie went to Boston, he got a taste of being number one, and maybe that changed his perspective a little bit, and that's why it doesn't feel like it feels like his ego is in a weird place at times, right? But when he was with LeBron in Cleveland, he was still young. He was willing to be a number two, because before LeBron came back, he was number one. Those 3 years before LeBron came back, but he was still young. You didn't hear any peeps about him in the media like that. I think it's also part of getting a taste of being number one. And then also he got to the age where he's you know what, this is what I want. I feel like I should be on my own team, making the decision for my best interest. And whether you think that was or wasn't the best decision in his interest, I feel like maybe part of it is just we see him as a team cancer per se, because hey, he got to be the number one on the team. But I also think it's just because he got older and he's I think I deserve this now. I'm a proven champion. LeBron's getting older. I'm about to hit my prime. Where's my shine, Yeah,
and LeBron coming in, even though it was a very good blessing for them, that interrupted what he thought was going to happen, right? LeBron came back sort of even though the rumors were there, nobody knew what he was going to do, right? It was all dependent on whether the Heat won that championship, and they still made it to the finals. They got embarrassed. They want redemption, blah, blah, blah. But Kyrie kind of, not in a bad way, he didn't get a bad deal, but he got a different deal than what he was promised, when he came to Cleveland. Going to be the guy they built around, and was going to be the guy. So, but like I said, in the right circumstance, if we're talking about the best of Kyrie, the best we can hope for out of Kyrie, the best he ever was, as long as I got the GM James on my team, I'll take him. I'll take him in his prime over Penny.
The safe choice is definitely Penny, though. I think we can both agree with that.
I agree. The safe choice and the smart choice. But, it's all about being dangerous with these online takes. All right. That's our 5 subjects for today. That was awesome. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Gavin with NBA Real Talk. Signing out. Super Mario Hoops. And we'll talk to you guys next time.